Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, may I have your attention, please? Are you ready to engage in a mind-blowing experience and hear talks about life, technology, entertainment, and business? The next episode of HIPTHER Talks starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HIPTHER Talks. My name is Jasper, and I will be hosting today's discussion about artificial intelligence. My guest is none other than Péter W. Szabó. Peter, thank you for being here today. Now, to begin with, could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do and what your relationship with AI is?
Thank you so much for inviting me to this talk. At the moment, I'm leading an AI startup by the name of AceTech in the middle of Transylvania in Târgu. And before that, I was working in London. I was the senior manager for front-end UX UI at the Stars Group, which is now Flutter Incorporated. And before that, I was the UX director of What Users Do, now Users Zoom, which is one of the best user experience research platforms at the moment. And my background before the AI became a thing, or it became a thing as we understand it today, was in user experience, user research. I have written a book in 2017 with the title of User Experience Mapping, and I have now over 20 years in front-end UI, UX related projects, and I have worked with many big brands and startups alike. And now, as I mentioned, my focus shifted towards AI and specifically enhancing user experience with the help of AI, and to a degree, using AI to make things easier, better. And among the many fields of AI, my focus is mainly on machine learning, I would say almost exclusively. And within machine learning, I was exploring a subfield called the collaborative filtering, but also solved quite a few optimization problems. And nowadays, I'm more interested in natural language processing and generative adversarial networks, which are very much advancing, which are advancing at a very fast pace in 2022, and hopefully this trend will continue next year.
Okay, so you've already mentioned quite a lot of more specific terms related to artificial intelligence. Now, while AI can hardly be considered a novelty, as far as I can tell, its constant and rapid evolution makes it difficult to keep up with it. So therefore, I'd first like you to define AI. What do you mean by AI? What is machine learning, and all these terms that you've mentioned?
I think the definition itself is constantly changing. As an academic discipline, artificial intelligence was starting to appear in the 50s of the last decade. And in 70 years now, it evolved quite a lot. So our understanding of AI, I would say, is vastly different than what it was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s of the last century. But the core concept of the assumption that we can simulate human intelligence with a machine sort of stayed around, more of a wishful thinking than a definition. And as a definition evolved, it was very important to separate AI into different subfields, because if you want to define AI even today, anything that is decision-making logic can be fit into one of the more popular definitions, even very simple decision logics, which is obviously too broad to be usable in any shape or form. The fundamental concept became machine learning, which can be defined in a more exact, more useful way in order to work with it. By machine learning, even from the early days of it until today, we understand computer algorithms that improve automatically through experience, through continuous learning. And I think from this machine learning concept was at least has some very strong roots in machine learning. Almost all current solutions which the average user understands as AI. So if you think about a natural language processor like Siri or Alexa or whichever, or if you think about self-driving cars, or if you think about stock market prediction, all of those have the core concept of machine learning, because they passed through a huge data set in their training phases, through, we call them epochs, to many cycles of learning. And as a result, they can predict future events with quite a good accuracy, or they can differentiate between things. They can do things like identifying tumors on a CT scan, or they can make sure that the self-driving car stays on the road, and they can also understand the road signs and things like that. And all this is possible due to learning from a large data set of relevant things. For instance, if you want image recognition, the data set will be millions and millions of images.
Yes, the layman would probably think of robots or some human-like machines when thinking about artificial intelligence. But like you said, this is a much broader branch of technology. So you've mentioned medicine, you've mentioned the mobility industry, self-driving cars. What would you say are the most significant uses of AI right now?
That's a bit hard to tell, but I would argue that natural language processing is first of all, it evolved rapidly. Now with the most recent algorithms, it became a very usable and a very efficient solution to understand, process a human language, things like automated translation, and that evolved quite a lot from Google Translate. If you think about DeepL, which is very popular nowadays, that's also a natural language-based processing algorithm which can translate from one language to another, but also there are less obvious uses of that. For instance, OpenAI's Clip, which connects text with images, and it's usually called the natural language supervision. So when you create so-called AI art, you type in some prompts, some keywords, And then this clip algorithm will try to understand what those prompts are. And then the generative adversarial network will create better and better artwork conforming to those concepts. So if you think about it from a simple translation, we reach the point where if you give a really abstract term like the birth of time, the AI can draw a picture for you with the topic of the birth of time. And it's not just understanding the two words differently, like drawing something about birth and something about time, but it can combine it and create really stunning so-called AI artworks.
Yes, that's absolutely fascinating as far as I'm concerned. You said that I would say that art is something that is more intricate. So I would think that a machine is not completely able to grasp this the whole concept of art, but still, like you said, and I believe I've seen some images which were AI created through the same process that you've just explained. So it is quite often said that AI poses a significant danger, some even considering it as a threat to humanity itself. Would you say this is real, or is it just another severe over-exaggeration by the media trying to raise more attention? You've mentioned art. Can it replace us? Can it replace artists as well?
I think that there is a bit of misunderstanding by the media there, but the threat is very real. But it's not the artificial intelligence by itself which is the threat to humanity, even to human life, but other humans are a threat to humans. And as the history of humankind shows, we are very capable of molding new technologies into weapons. So whenever a new technological breakthrough appears, very shortly it will be weaponized. And this happened with a lot of things. You can even in the antiquity, things like bronze working or smelting into the combustion engine. Obviously, it can be used in a car, but it can also be used in a tank. And it's very likely that if the combustion engine exists, very shortly tanks will appear. And same with atomic fusion, electricity, you name it. Sooner or later, it will be turned into a weapon. Now, unfortunately, AI-enabled or AI-aided weapon systems already appeared, so that's no longer a possibility. And with this reasoning, it's very easy to understand why this is dangerous, because it turns killing other human beings a sort of impersonal thing, because you are no longer directly killing other humans, you are just instructing a machine to do so. So it's much more remote. If you have, let's say, a killer drone with a facial recognition algorithm and a patching algorithm and a lot of AI-based algorithms, which will enable that drone to kill someone, even if it's guided, or even if the input is given from miles and miles away, or even from the other side of the world. So from this perspective, AI is very dangerous, and also it's very scalable, because it's very easy, if you have the necessary funds, to create a huge army of machine learning driven killer bots or killer drones or whatever. Probably a drone is more practical than a walking drone, like in a Terminator style human-like drone. Is less practical than one that can fly, and it's very small inside. So also AI driven war fighter planes or other machines of the war, but I think the fighter planes are the most obvious example, will not just will, but already are outperforming human pilots, especially because they can do maneuvers which would be impossible for a human pilot due to the accelerations and the lateral G's and all that things which are happening in a real aerial combat situation in modern combat. So sooner or later, all the fighter planes and all the bomber planes and most of the warfare will be totally transformed by machine learning, and this could lead to a war where you can circumvent human consciousness, because if you have human soldiers, they in at least in theory, but usually also in practice, they have some sort of consciousness. So they will ideally not obey orders for mass murder or killing the civilians and things like that. But if you create a machine learning algorithm which doesn't have that sort of constraint, it will mean that if you have the necessary funds and you are quite evil, you could order the execution of thousands or even millions with a press of a button. So that's why it's very dangerous, but not AI itself is dangerous. It's human nature, which is proven to be very dangerous through the centuries, and unfortunately, that's still the case even today.
Yes, you've talked about warfare as being probably the most significant threat. What about robots and artificial intelligence replacing us at the workspace?
I don't think that this is a threat. I would say this is more of an opportunity. First of all, it will be happening, and it will be happening in this decade and the next. So that's almost a certainty that a lot of jobs will be what we currently consider a day job will be replaced by AI, and even things which are not as obvious, like accounting will be done 99% by AI. Things like concept art will have been impacted by AI. Even software development will be impacted by AI, and actually there is a very good AI which helps software developers at the moment, which is called the Copilot by GitHub. And I'm also using Copilot when I'm writing code, as it makes your life much easier, because Copilot can write large chunks of code for you, and this way software development is becoming faster and faster. And in 10 years or so, I'm fairly confident that you would tell exactly what kind of software do you want, and the AI Copilot, or whatever the name will be, will write most of the code for you, in a very optimized way, in a obviously very, very fast, and at a much cheaper hourly rate than any human developer would even consider working for. So, this can be said for almost all walks of life. Even industries which were previously considered quote unquote creative industries, things like copywriting. Even now there is a very good AI called the Copy.ai, which through the help of natural language processing, it can create copy in over 25 languages, including more obscure or less frequently spoken languages such as Hungarian or Romanian or Slovenian, or you name it. So it can create copy. It can create concept art. It can create a lot of things. It can also create 3D models. So it will certainly replace a lot of jobs. But this, I believe, is an opportunity to reach a better society, because this is sort of similar to the Industrial Revolution, because when things like the steam engine and the locomotive and the steam mills appeared, and factories appeared, and things like an automatic sewing machine appeared, those certainly costed a lot of jobs. When agriculture was industrialized through the means of tractors, pesticides, and a lot of industrial effort was put into streamlining agriculture, that totally changed society, because before the Industrial Revolution, most of humankind was working on the fields, because somehow you had to produce the food everyone eats. So that was not an option not to have a mainly agrarian society. Even if there was a small chunk of population in cities and there were some manufactories or whatever, that was a small fraction compared to the peasantry working the fields when you compare the sheer number of them. And that was a very hard job, and also it was kind of hindering the evolution of humankind as a species, because you had to work very hard in order to just eat, so to sustain your biological self. Now with industrialization, there is a small fraction of humans working in agriculture, and if you don't account for the biofarms where people work mostly with their hands, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I can certainly see the dedication, but that's a conscious choice. They are not doing biofarming because this is a necessity for them. They are doing it because this is their vocation. They really want to do that because they believe in it, and then they become biofarmers. On the other hand, the vast majority of population is fed with the help of the achievements of the industrialized agriculture. And I think the same thing will happen with AI. So if you take an artist, for instance, they will no longer need to work very hard, because their job as an artist will transform to a job similar to what you would call an art director today. So they are giving prompts to the AI, or they will be giving, but it's already possible with Midjourney or DALL-E 2 or similar algorithms. Instead, they are just directing to the AI to create a lot of arts, and then they curate the art, picking the best one, tweaking the prompts, saying things a bit differently, and then they can create large amounts of very good art in a fraction of time, but only if they choose to. So if they decide that, okay, now I want to paint something with my hand, similarly, that now today, if you want, you can just, if you have a pot, you can just plant some flower, or even a turnip if you have a plant large enough for it. You just plant, but you do it because you want to, because this gives you some sort of pleasure or satisfaction that you are growing your own food. But this is not a necessity. It's not like if you don't plant a turnip today, you might starve during the winter. It's not like that. And the same thing will happen to, thanks to the AI revolution we are experiencing today, is that people can only do what they really, really wish to do. And they have the ability to choose. And it will be also very easy to switch from one thing to another. Maybe today you feel like really artsy and you want some AI to create some prompts for based on some artwork based on your prompts today. And tomorrow you feel like writing a book, and then you create a book in a day with the help of natural language processing. There are machine learning algorithms writing books even today, and this will be much more sophisticated in the future. And then you can jump from one job to another, and also it enables you to have a lot more free time, and in your free time to do whatever you wish. So I believe that the quality of life for humans will significantly improve due to this, because people will start to understand that the necessity of life is not of being stuck in a 9-to-5 job 5 days a week. So you are not wasting at least a third of your life in a job that you don't like. You will have the ability to pick the job you like at the moment you like it, because your preferences can also change, which is not that easy with today's jobs. Like if I love being a software developer today and tomorrow I would want to be a 3D artist, that's a bit hard to switch, but in the future that will be entirely possible, and also the overall job satisfaction will be harder, because the ability of humans will need to adjust. So of course there will be a bit of a storming period when people who are really not keen to switch to this AI-assisted world, they will definitely try to fight the system, find the change, and all change. This is the nature of change, to create a counter reaction. So there will be people who are really, really opposed to all those machine learning based solutions. They are really opposed to learn new things. So instead of doing their accounting job as they used to, they would need to learn how to interact with an accounting AI. The same with stock traders, same with pretty much any walk of life. So it will be a storming period. That's why they are called revolutions, such as the Industrial Revolution. And it's also possible that during that time, there will be a large portion of humanity who will suffer in one way or another. But after that, we reach to a much higher living standard where all our needs and desires are fulfilled by machines and with the help of machine learning. So that's my vision for the future.
That is quite a vision. Allow me to quickly get back to that idea of the Industrial Revolution. It is said that we are right now living the fourth Industrial Revolution, which is AI and the Internet of Things and this huge ecosystem of interconnected machines and algorithms. How significant is this fourth Industrial Revolution? Have we seen most of what it has to offer, or is this just the beginning that we are living right now?
That's a question that would be much easier to answer 20 years in the future than it is now. But it's very likely that we are at the beginning of it, mostly because the term itself, the fourth industrial revolution, was popularized at the World Economic Forum 7 years ago. So that's since 2015, since Klaus Schwab started to use this term, we start to think about the fourth industrial revolution, and it's representing a change. And with all changes, it's very hard to draw a clear line that, okay, this was the digital age, which most people would put in the 90s and the first decade of the new millennia. So things in about 7 or 10 years ago, and spanning back until the beginning of the internet and the popularization about, so from, let's say, from 94 until the early 2000s. So that's, if we call that the digital age, then we are now transitioning in a new age of humankind where everything is data-driven, and we try to do more and more automations and trying to connect things in a way that was not even imaginable before. And they say that the age we are transitioning into with the fourth industrial revolution will be probably called the imagination age, because anything you can imagine can be created with machine learning. And this is why I think prompt-based AI-generated art is the prime example or the flagship product of the early stage of the imagination age, because you imagine something, you tell it to the AI, and the AI creates it. So that's why it's an age of unbound imagination. But obviously we are at the beginning, and just now we are trying to explore what is possible to imagine, if that makes sense. So and also another aspect of Industry 4.0 is what they usually call the decentralized decisions. So of course, now everyone is talking about the crypto bubble bursting, and they are comparing with the dot-com bubble bursting in the third industrial revolution, and they are not very dissimilar, so that has some merit in it, but it doesn't matter because similarly with the dot-com bubble bursting, it's not that after that period of turbulence, the technologies which were born before the dot-com bubbles bursting, they didn't survive. Quite the contrary, they become so commonplace that nowadays we can't even imagine our life without things like the domain name system, things like online payments, things like e-commerce in the scale of Amazon, and many other similar things which were the byproduct of the third industrial revolution. And I think the same thing will happen with blockchain. I don't believe that cryptocurrency is the best use for blockchain, but the blockchain technology, and definitely not NFTs, but blockchain by itself as a means of decentralized decisions will very likely stay with us in the decades to come, and this has the potential to become one of the defining factors of this age of imagination, because when everyone can imagine whatever they wish, in order to avoid total chaos and total anarchy, you need to have some sort of decision-making structure. But the current human structures, such as governments, such as corporations, are not really fit for this new era, and that's why I believe that oddly enough, the power will go back to the people, and I'm not saying this in a communist way. Instead, it means that the individual contribution will be exponentially larger.
Okay, so let's talk a bit more specifically about the gambling industry. How does AI enter this landscape, and can it revolutionize the industry?
Well, I'm 100% sure that it can and it will. I also have some research in that direction. But I think gambling industry now faces a very important milestone in its evolution, because the nature of gambling industry is that it is a form of entertainment, but a specific form of entertainment where you have this sort of an ambiguous feeling towards it. It's no secret that most people put money into gambling in order to win. So the desire to win, to have this sort of achievement of winning by testing your luck or skills to a certain degree, or knowledge in sports or whatever, will lead to a monetary gain. So this is the base layer of the gambling industry. All gambling sort of stems from this principle. Now, with this, all the operators, all the companies will offer the player a similar thing. So in all gambling companies in the world, which I'm aware of, you deposit some money, and through some simple or complex way, you have the ability to win a proportionally larger amount of money. So that's the base idea. And in there, you don't really have a competitive advantage unless you try to force a bigger possibility or amount of money for win, which is also possible, but it will cut into your profit more and more. And it's easy to see that if a lot of companies are outcompeting each other in giving better and better bonuses, giving better and better odds at sports, and just trying to create an economies of scale where you give huge bonuses with the hope of attracting new players, is not sustainable on the long run. So if the cost of acquisition for a new player in gambling in certain jurisdictions is a huge amount of money, you can very easily reach a situation where gambling is no longer sustainable for the company. Especially in certain markets, we are going towards that. And what I believe to be the key to what can be the key differentiator for you is creating better experience for your users. Now, this is a no-brainer. Most gambling companies reached that conclusion long ago. But the problem with creating better experiences for your players is that each player is different by nature. So player A would define, or even if they can't define it, they would enjoy a totally different experience than player B or player C. So you need to make sure that you create the best experience for one player, for another. And if you take this granularity further, you would need a UX designer next to each of your players to create the best user journey for that specific player. And with this, you could engage them, you could make them stay, because this would be the best online gaming platform for them. But this is not feasible, or at least it wasn't without machine learning. But I believe that machine learning will transform the industry because it will create the best experience for a specific player. And I'm not just talking about recommender engines, like how Netflix revolutionized video streaming, that it will always recommend a show to you based on your taste. But certainly this is an important stepping stone or starting point for you, because if you can recommend a let's restrict this to sportsbook. So if you can recommend a game with some nice odds for a user which they are likely to bet on, they will probably do so without thinking about, maybe I need to go to the competition, whatever, because you knew already that this is their favorite team and they are very likely to bet on this team winning. And then you would just target them very, very specifically, saying that, okay, Real Madrid is playing tonight, and do you want to bet on them winning? Do you want to bet on them scoring at least one goal, and things like that? And with this, you engage your customers, and they feel that, yeah, this is a sports book where my input really matters, where what I what I want to play is really taken into consideration. And especially in sports betting, there are so many things nowadays where you can bet that it's very easy to get lost. I mean, now it's easy to just pull in the whole bet radar feed and give the option to the players to bet on the most minute detail of a game, and then there you have it. You will have an odds, and you can have that, and it's coming from the feed, so you don't, as an operator, you don't have much to do there. But the problem is, this is not creating a really good user experience, and it's not engaging, and it's becoming harder and harder to attract young people who are used to online games in a totally different and more tailor-made way and customized way, and with gamification and things like that. So it's becoming harder and harder to attract the young audience, but also not lose the older traditional players. So in order to cater all audiences, you need machine learning to create custom-made experiences for each and every of your players. And I believe that this will totally change the industry, and this enables those companies who will be fast to jump on the machine learning bandwagon and just go with it and implement a machine learning based UI and total user experience. It will be a game changer for them. Sorry for the pun, but it is. I mean, imagine that you are just logging into your favorite betting platform, and you are greeted with the home page in your favorite team's colors, saying that in 2 hours your favorite team will play this game, and this 3 bets is what we handpicked for you. Do you want to bet on them? And then with a single click, you can do so, and it's very easy. You can very easily do it without any fear of misclicks or whatever as a second screen when watching the game on TV, or even if you are in the stadium, you just have your smartphone with it, and very easily, even in low light conditions, you can just say, yeah, that's a good thing to bet on, so I will. And this way, you will get a very engaged audience, and with the help of probably gambling industry specifically tailored copywriting algorithms. If you want to read things like match commentaries for gamblers, for instance, there could be an AI which writes the match commentaries, or even says them in real life, specifically tailored to the fans of that team who are also happen to be betting on it. And it could say things like, okay, now this is a very dangerous situation. Maybe you want to bet on it because the odds are still good. Do you want to do so? And then you can just confirm or deny that request. And this is all while you are engaged with the game, and to bet your user journey of watching the game and your mental model doesn't break. So everything is in the same mental model, and it also enhances the enjoyment of the game, because it's easy to see that if you are having some stake in a game, it becomes much more suspenseful, and most people would argue that it's more enjoyable to watch a game where you bet, even if it's a small amount of money, on the winning team. So everyone wins in the end, and and then companies would not outcompete each other by cutting the odds and cutting into their profits. Instead, they would outcompete each other by creating better and better machine learning algorithms, which create better and better experiences. And in the end, I believe that the average users care more about having a good gambling experience than having a marginally bit better payout, because when you win and then you're happy with it. It doesn't make the winning less enjoyable because you won like 0.01% more or less.
What does this mean in terms of implementation? If it's such a no-brainer, let's say, to have it for a gambling operator, for an iGaming operator, does this have a big market? Is this a huge investment?
At the moment, it is quite. First, I think that the biggest barrier is the decision making. So at most gambling companies, and I'm really apologizing to the exceptions because there are very good notable exceptions where this is obviously not true. But many gambling companies have a leadership structure which is reluctant to change, and in which case it is very hard to open for change. It's very hard to sell machine learning based anything to those companies, and although many gambling companies nowadays reach the point where they say, okay, now we need to hire some bright computer scientists, even machine learning experts, because we need them in the company because this is coming. But if you don't have in your decision-making process someone who's really involved in machine learning, you might have the tendency to just decline or just wait until your local competition does that. But the problem is, by the time your local competition implements a working solution with AI-based customized experiences, for instance, it's already too late for you, because that's such a huge change that it could evaporate your market lead if you were the market leader, or pretty much lead you in a situation where you need to play a catch-up game. And that always means that your competition will be one step ahead of you technologically, because they can continue to evolve and make improvements to your solution. That's one thing. The other thing is that most gaming platforms are quite antiquated. They are based on legacy code, and if you want to implement something radically new, then it's a huge challenge, because if you think about a gaming platform which doesn't even have a very good and well-documented API, or if it doesn't support native mobile applications with a very good API at least, or even a way to generate them, or there are many things which create a technological gap for you to implement this. So, and most gambling companies are very reluctant to change their platform provider. They are very reluctant to change their player account management, to change their game aggregator, because doing so is insanely hard. And the best interest of the companies who sell game aggregators or player account management or whatever based on legacy code without a well-documented API or an API that only exists on paper and PowerPoints, but not really usable in reality, is for you not to change, because if you would have the ability to easily change, then they would be out of business in a couple of months. So they put a lot of barriers into changing those providers for you, and because of this, it's very hard for new platform providers to break into the business and try to create new and better solutions, maybe AI-based solutions. That's one thing. The other thing is that if you want to do this for any machine learning, not just in gambling, but in here, it also more obvious. You need a lot and lots of data about the user behavior on your website. And there are big gambling companies in the world where the user behavior data is pretty much non-existent. They say, well, we have Google Analytics, and at best we have Power BI, or we have some sort of business intelligence solution, but nothing beyond that. So they don't know what the users are doing on their website, and especially not why they are doing certain things the way they are doing. And because of the lack of data, you can't train a machine learning algorithm without data. That's a fact. You need a huge training, validation, and test data set in the millions. And in e-commerce, as a comparison, the e-commerce giants started gathering data in the advent of big data era, because they understood that user data is highly valuable and it will be insanely valuable in the near future. And because they started gathering data in due time, now they have a very robust data gathering and data warehousing infrastructure, which machine learning can tap into and give predictions. And this proven to be a competitive advantage for Amazon, for instance, because they can very accurately predict stock. They can also predict purchases. They can recommend items with a good accuracy. They can drive marketing campaigns, you name it, to a specific user. And in this, the gaming industry is really, really far behind, unfortunately. But they say that the best time for this change would have been yesterday, but the second best time is today. So if a gaming company decides to move into the direction of big data and data-driven user experience, and then prediction-based user experience, and then user-tailored user experience with the help of machine learning. If someone is willing to take those steps, and now taking those steps is easier than it was before. So now, if you just install the Elastic Logstash Kibana stack and implement it in with a bit of an effort in 2 weeks, it can be very easily implemented, even for a large gambling corporation, then you would at least make the first step. And by the time you find your machine learning solution, which could be good or ideal for your users, by the time you have a good chunk of data, and even until that time, you can make data-driven decision because you are starting to gather data. And in gambling, there are lots of players out there, so it's easy to catch up and gather lots of data. And especially if none of your competitors did anything in that direction, that can be a huge competitive advantage for any company. So I would definitely recommend it doing today.
Does this implementation disrupt the gaming process? So will it be a completely new experience, which also involves players having to learn and adapt to this implementation of AI, or is it seamless?
Well, I would say that if done correctly, it should be seamless, and all the new things will be so obvious and so streamlined into the usual process that the players might not even conceive this as a completely new thing, but a natural evolution of your gaming website, for instance. So they would reach the same website, the same brand they are used to. So you will not be losing your old customers, but they would start to see minor changes at first. For instance, they might, let's say in a hypothetical scenario, you implemented a machine learning based solution to create customized experiences. And today you arrive to this decision, you implement it, and after the release of the implementation, the first day, your users come in and they don't see any difference at all. The next day, some users might see that, okay, now it's showing me only tennis. Before it showed me a lot of soccer or other sports, but because I'm only betting on tennis, it's only showing me tennis. But they don't worry much about that because they were always betting on tennis, so they might not even consciously acknowledge the fact, but it will be one less click to bet on tennis because on the homepage there is tennis for them. And the day after, maybe for another user who is more into football, most sports betting sites, at least in Europe, have soccer related content on the homepage, and that's the most in focus, so they don't see anything odd in the first day. But in the second day, they will see that, okay, this is showing me the Premier League, not just random games from different countries, but because I'm mainly betting on Premier League, this is showing me Premier League games. That's fine. And then the day after, it's only showing me games from Arsenal and Manchester United, because those are the teams where I mostly bet. And then after a week, maybe, the homepage is in Gunners colors and everything is Arsenal themed. And then you might be wondering, well, are they sponsoring the Arsenal, or why the sudden change that everything is so red and so much to my taste? But yeah, it's a good thing, because seemingly this company has a similar interest than I do in sports, so they also seem to love Arsenal. But the thing is, another user would see the exact same domain, the exact same homepage in a totally different team. Maybe it's Barcelona team because that's their favorite team, and then they would have the same thoughts that, yeah, this is the company for me, because this is also somehow loving Barcelona as much as I do, so I must bet here. And everyone would get the same experience in a very seamless way without needing to learn anything new, because instead of having the players to learn new things, it's the opposite. The system is learning the behaviors of the players.
Okay, bit of an open question as we are nearing the end of our discussion. Do you think that, so doesn't this implementation of AI and the significant improvement of user experience raise concerns of data privacy, of responsible gambling? You know, because I suppose these improved experiences somewhat aim to keep the player coming back and keep the player spending more time on the website. And also you mentioned advertising, you know, having the site in the color of a specific team, and maybe even including merch or whatever. I'm really not an expert on this topic. Doesn't that complicate things? I know I've asked quite a big question, but you know, I'm just I want to also touch upon this side of it as well.
That's a very good question. Actually, privacy with GDPR and CCPA and other things became a really hot topic in the machine learning community, and rightly so, because it's easy to understand that the user's personal data is very valuable. But fortunately, for machine learning, we can work very easily and just as good with totally anonymized data. Contrary to traditional segmentation, you would need things like the user's gender, location, age, things like that to segment the users. Now with machine learning, we no longer need to know where does this user lives, what's their gender, their age, their whatever, their occupation, salary range. Those were really, really important in the past for targeting, but now they are not needed due to a machine learning algorithm called the collaborative filtering, which creates a lot better prediction and a lot better targeting without the need of any personal data by the similarities and dissimilarities between different users. So in a nutshell, you can imagine this as a huge matrix where, and by huge I mean millions and millions of rows, where all the rows are users and all the columns are different items, which you can define however you wish. Maybe they are themes, maybe they are elements, maybe they are button colors, whatever. And then you would see that somehow you measure the likelihood of a user interacting with that item. And for some users, you will have that already measured because you track them on your site and you know that the user with this ID, and you don't know anything personal, just an ID assigned to them when they first visited the website or when they registered. So it's not tracking them in a conventional sense. You just have a user ID, and that user ID interacted with Arsenal in a very favorable way. And then you know that another user ID did a lot of similar things than this user, but when you look at the Arsenal cell of the matrix, you see a zero, that meaning that we don't know if this person will like or they wouldn't like that. So that's a tricky situation, but experiments have proven that it's very likely that two very, very similar users would, if they match in other things, they would also match in this one. So we don't need to make a differentiation based on location, age, and gender and other things in order to target them with Arsenal themed advertising or homepage or whatever, because we know that similar users love Arsenal, therefore this user is very likely to love Arsenal. But the first time we see that they are not engaging with the Arsenal content we are creating, now we have data about that user object pair, and now we are no longer bombarding them with Arsenal, because it's also possible that there is not a good match there. But maybe based on this new information, we know that now this is more similar to that specific Chelsea fan. So now we will target them with Chelsea team stuff and things like that. So the system is getting better and better, and through continuous learning and online learning, it means that at some point in the near future, we will have all our existing users perfectly mapped to their preferences. And when a new user arrives, even after a few seconds, they will get a very, very accurate prediction.
Okay, well, thank you for this discussion. Before we finish, how could you formulate a key takeaway of our discussion today about AI, about the industry? What would you say is something that we should take away from this discussion?
I think if I have to summarize everything in one sentence, or maybe more than one, but in a summary-like way, I would say that AI is definitely the future. Machine learning will define our day-to-day lives, and it will be essential for all industries. But if you think about the gaming industry, those operators who are very fast to go in the direction of machine learning, even when the field is not established, even when it's a new thing, they can gain a significant competitive advantage. And this has the potential to totally reshape the industry in a way that was not thought to be possible before. And current market leaders might lose their position, and new companies, even totally new out of nowhere brands could take over a large user base because they were fast to implement a machine learning based custom experience for all their users. So I believe that now is the best time to start thinking about machine learning and how you can employ it to create a competitive advantage for your company, or how you can benefit from it in any other way.
Peter, thank you so much for today's discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, Péter W. Szabó was my guest in this episode. Thank you for listening. Check out the other episodes, and I hope to see you all next time.
Thank you for joining. Be sure to check back next week for the next HIPTHER Talks, and subscribe on Amazon Music, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and Pandora.